Thank you. It's continuous sequential partial attention. And there's really no such thing as multitasking because our brains were not designed to do skillful work on a multitasking basis. So yes, many of us do, and I'm very guilty of this, multitask, but we cannot do good work and we harm our bodies and our minds by doing it. And the mind doesn't want to stay focused. There's nothing wrong with you if this is the way you find your mind. In fact, it means your mind is operating very well. It's not a defect. Our minds were designed this way. They were designed to solve problems. And if we pair our mind with our hyperkinetic workplace, we have issues. And here are some things that were actually on the left side of the screen. Every 3 minutes is the average amount of time between workplace distractions. And I know in a busy law library, whether you're working in a firm or whether you're working in a academic library or a court, you have a lot of interruptions. Yet it takes 23 minutes to get refocused on a task. And these are not, I didn't make these figures up. These are from a study that was done in 2012 at UC Irvine. The other thing that is really contributing to our hyperkinetic environment is our phones. And our phones, we look at them at least 150 times per day. And I actually think that's more. This study was done by Kleiner, Perkins, and Caulfield in 2013. And I actually think we look at our phones more today. And then 47% of our waking hours are spent thinking about what's not going on. So even as you're sitting here listening to me talk on, you're probably thinking about something that's coming later or something that you didn't finish or whatever. And this was this was discovered in a study at Harvard that was done in 2016. And that study further found that each person has about 70,000 thoughts a day. So just think about it. Now, we have overloaded circuits. Law librarians, law students, faculty, attorneys, we deal with huge amount of information coming into us every day, and that's called inputs. And we try to deal with this information overload, and being in this hyperkinetic environment on a steady basis results in a tendency to exhibit black and white thinking. So the normal perspective of shades of gray sort of like ebbs away. Sometimes when we're trying to keep up, we tend to work faster. So we have difficulties in staying organized, setting priorities and managing time. And we have feelings of low levels of panic and guilt. And if this is not something you feel, I congratulate you. I feel panic and guilt a lot. So let's think about it. How do we train the lawyer brain? And when I say lawyer, it can be anybody who works as a legal professional. We're taught to think critically, whether we're researching, whether we're practicing, whatever we're doing, to think like a lawyer. We're trained to find problems and weaknesses in a solution. We're trained to look for faults. We're trained to imagine all positive negative outcomes and to share those negative outcomes with clients or with other people that we're working with. We're often immersed in conflict and the unexpected. Those who are practicing, or even your clients could be people in the law library who are stressed, sometimes angry, sometimes frustrated, sometimes waiting till the last minute, sometimes highly emotional. We're always aware when we give people work product of the consequences of making a mistake. We manage huge volumes of work that often require huge amount of intense concentration. And we're used to being objected to, opposed, overruled, denied, or questioned. And law students even have another thing, and very often they're our clients, they're used to being cold called, and that is a scary thing. So how does all of this stress that we build up affect the body? Well, stress is perceived from either an internal or an external cue. A message usually is sent to the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the autonomic nervous system. Adrenaline floods nerve endings. Blood clotting time is reduced. Blood pressure rises. Sugar is pumped to fuel muscles. And cholesterol and fats are mobilized in the bloodstream. Now, this reaction is to internal and external cues. And sometimes there's a saying that the cells that fire together wire together. And you might say, yeah, but sometimes when I'm stressed, I do a better job. And a little bit of stress is great. But when this is a constant state and having all of this stress response flooding through our system, this was all designed for fight, flight, and the response. It's not good. And we have like these, high running sort of all of this flowing through our system. It's not good, and it's wear and tear on our body. So what happens? It results in burnout. And burnout is characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased sense of personal accomplishment. So sometimes we're not even aware that we're burned out, because it's like the frog that is boiled in water. We're in it and we don't realize it's even happening. So here are some mental clues, some emotional clues, some physical clues, and behavioral clues that will give you an idea about whether you're experiencing burnout. And if you just look at these lists: memory problems, inability to concentrate, sometimes poor judgment, moodiness, inability to relax. I know I very often find it very hard to unwind, feeling overwhelmed, just general unhappiness, not all is well with the world. And it can even manifest itself in physical aspects, such as aches and pains, diarrhea or constipation, nausea, rapid heartbeat or chest pains, and maybe either eating too much, eating too little, procrastinating. That is a classic. So you might again say, well, but Philippa, it's great. Sometimes when I feel a little stressed, I feel like I want to do something. I feel motivated. And it's like having a violin string with the dynamic tension. The perfect pitch produces the best sound, but too little, we're stuck in slow motion, appease and freeze. And if we're stuck in overdrive, the string can break. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And then, of course, the pandemic has added to the other natural stresses and strains of engaging in work and each other. And in fact, I recently read a fabulous article in The Atlantic. It's Why People Are Acting So Weird. And there's more crime, unruly passenger incidents, and other types of strange behavior that we even saw at the Oscar. And I think I would add to this whole COVID, into the pandemic, this whole situation of the war between the war that Russia is exacting on Ukraine. I mean, there's just so many stresses in addition to our own working stresses. So what's the solution to this unfocused and soul-draining busyness and stress-inducing state? What can you do to recenter yourself and get off the hamster wheel that seems to be our normal day? I'd like to read you a quote from Holly Rogers. She wrote a book that is called The Mindful 20-something. And I think the book is, I don't like the title, but I love the book because I think this book is for everyone. She runs the Koru Mindfulness Center at Duke University. And she says, our lives are a freaking miracle. But if we don't wake up and pay attention, we are liable to miss much of the thrill of our time-limited ride on this beautiful planet. If you frequently have thoughts that begin, as soon as this is over, I will start, then you are in the habit of pushing your full engagement in life off into some foggy, distant future. And I know for a long time, I did that frequently. When I lose 10 pounds, when I finish this book, when I prepare my class, I will do this. But that's living in the future. It's not in the present. And Jack Kornfield, who is somebody that I follow, recently wrote about the importance of retreat and rest. And when we think of retreat, we think of long periods of going away, but he says, even a short period of retreat is a benevolent rest. And I love that concept of having a benevolent rest, a stepping outside of busy daily routines and our ordinary identity. Released from the tyranny of time, we are invited into the reality of the present. And notice this concentration on the present, to see the mystery of life anew. Find ways, he says, to take regular retreats, long ones, short ones, daily mini ones, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to just stop and do nothing. Sit silently on the grass or on the balcony or the porch or on your yoga zafu. First, breathe with compassion for your busy self, and then put down all your plans. Open yourself to wonder. Let your heart be fed and your spirit renewed. May it be so. And even if you do that for 5 or 10 minutes a day, you will have a benevolent rest. And that's what we're looking for. So in that spirit of not staying in the present, here's a little cartoon of Snoopy. My mind gets to wandering and I become troubled. That Harvard study that I mentioned, that 47%, almost half of our time, is spent not thinking about what we're doing. So we're washing the dishes, but we're not thinking about washing the dishes. We're folding clothes, we're thinking about something else. I invite you in this next week or so to whatever you're doing, focus on it. If you're brushing your teeth, brush your teeth mindfully. If you're taking a shower, feel how the water feels on your body. Feel the soap, feel the cream that you put on later. Just really focus on what you're doing. That's getting into mindfulness, staying in the moment instead of mindlessness, which is sometimes known as monkey mind. And that's not being present for our lives, like that Holly Rogers quote mentioned. So I'd like to start with a way of getting into the present moment. And this is 4-7-8 breathing. So what you do is you take in a breath for 4 seconds to the count of 4, you hold it for 7, and then you breathe it out for 8. And you notice here that the out breath is twice as long as the in breath. And that's a trick. When you breathe in and breathe out, if you can lengthen the breathing out to twice of what the in breath is, that will slow down your nervous system. So I don't know if this was a wise thing to put this cartoon in of this break. Maybe this will not help us. So I invite you to close your eyes and just breathe into the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's try that 2 more times. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now just sit and feel into your body. Do you feel a little bit calmed down? Maybe you don't. That breathing techniques are a great way to break that feeling of nervousness or that feeling of tension that we get. I sometimes use the 4-7-8 breathing technique when I'm in traffic in Boston, because Boston traffic is really hectic or really slow, depending. And I tend to be a little bit impatient. So the 4-7-8 breathing techniques is excellent. If it's hard for you to hold your breath for 7 seconds or to do that long, slow 8-second breathing out, sometimes people like to do what's called box breathing, which is 4 seconds in, 4 seconds holding, 4 seconds out, and then 4 seconds starting again. I personally like the long exhale. I think it really calms down the nervous system. So what is mindfulness? Because I'm certified in both Koru meditation technique and MBSR meditation technique, I love the founder of MBSR's definition, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. And he says mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. We're so built, and as we saw on that lawyer training slide, we're so critical and we're so trained to be judgmental and dualistic, not in a mean way, but just in a critical thinking way, that it sort of seeps over into our other parts of our lives. So what mindfulness brings is this sense of curiosity, awe, and wonder instead of judgment. So things aren't good or bad. They're skillful or non-skillful. That's a skillful way of doing something. Maybe I need a little bit more skill the next time. So awareness that arises from paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So what are some of the reasons that we would want to approach or think about mindfulness as a way of being? Again, using curiosity, the promise of health benefits, seeking inner peace in our very hectic world. Perhaps some people approach mindfulness to heal an inner wound or to resolve a personal conflict, to seek greater balance in life or equanimity. Some people approach mindfulness to seek meaning in life. Maybe they've had an experience of someone, a loved one passing, or a loved one's sickness, or maybe they have a personal medical diagnosis, or maybe even a terminal illness. And existential questions such as, what's the point of all this? Who am I really? And what's going on inside of me? And that's one of my favorites. What's going on inside of me? And I meditate daily, and I have for the last 7 years, and it has really positively changed my life. So some of you may be skeptics out there about the efficacy of mindfulness, or you may think it's a fad, and there are such things as we call them McMindfulness, and I think very often things are passed off as mindfulness that are really not, but it's really recognized in hospital settings and work settings. Google, there's a whole mindfulness in school movement, and it's been used to really bring sports players to their optimum levels of performance. And there's been an exponential rise in mindfulness research. I'm sorry that this slide is 7 years old, so it goes from 1980 to 2017, but you can see how research on mindfulness has really increased in the past years. And in the last 5 years, it has continued to increase. I just don't have a slide. But anything that I say, even if I don't give you the site, is usually backed by research. And one of the most famous pieces of research was done by Professor Sarah Lazar and her colleagues at Harvard. And they demonstrated that mindfulness, and they took MBSR, which is the mindfulness meditation. It's an 8-week course started by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. And they studied that particular mindfulness in earnest. And they found that when at the end of 8 weeks, that the gray matter in the brain, which is the regions of the brain associated with executive functioning, which included regions associated with learning, memory, emotion regulation, perspective taking, empathy, and compassion, were strengthened. So they proved that there is neuroplasticity in the brain. And this study was done in the 2015. So just looking at brain basics, that gray matter exists in the prefrontal cortex, and that's really the youngest part of the brain. The oldest part of the brain is the amygdala, and that's sort of, some people call it lizard brain. That's at the base where your head meets your spine, and that's the whole fight, flight, or freeze, because early man had to know to get, is that a stick in this in the ground, or is that a snake? Is that saber-toothed tiger going to come after me or not? So that's the whole amygdala. And that's when we lose our reason, when we're not being reasonable or irrational, usually we're in the amygdala. That's a lot of the seat of anger, the seat of emotion. And then the default mode network is where the mind will go to if you're not in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's sort of mind wandering, self-referential thinking, worry, where a lot of us end up. And we want to stay more in the prefrontal cortex, the place of reason. And that's why mindfulness is important, because it strengthens that gray matter. So I love this quote by Dr. Viktor Frankl, and you may have read this book in high school or college, Man's Search for Meaning. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's, to me, what mindfulness does. It gives you that spaciousness of thinking, that spaciousness of going within and not reacting, responding, but not reacting. So I'd like to teach you another technique. So we did the 4-7-8 breathing, and this is called the stop technique. And this is really useful to break a stressful triggering event. So you have to know what your personal stress triggers are. And when you notice something, whether it's sweating, whether it's the heartbeat, whether it's sticky palms, whatever it is, use this simple technique. And I love it because think of the stop sign and just, I'm going to ask you to just sit. And once again, if closing your eyes is accessible for you or comfortable for you, please do it. Otherwise, keep your eyes in a soft focus. Just stop and still the body. Stop. Just breathe in and out and just still the body. Take a pause. Next, take a breath and notice taking the breath. Don't just breathe in. Notice the body breathing in and notice the body breathing out. Notice the parts of the body that move when you bring the breath in and what moves when you bring the breath out. Just observe what's happening in your body as you stop and take a breath. What's happening here? Check in with the body, check in with your mind state, emotions, urges, the environment. What's happening in this environment? Is there something here worth getting upset about? And then the last is proceed with an expanded sense of the moment. And that's what expanding the sense of the moment is. It's stopping and examining with curiosity your intentions and the ability to choose a skillful response to the question, what's called for now? That's all it is. So If we were in a room together, I would ask you how you felt, but I'll leave that till the end. So you might think, well, what's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Mindfulness is the more inclusive noun, and meditation is how you become more mindful. Meditation is like going to the gym. So if you were training to run the marathon or a marathon, you wouldn't just go out and start running tomorrow and running 26 miles. You would have to train a little day by day, and that's how meditation helps us. Meditation is a way of just sitting and doing nothing. It's just being. It's sitting and not thinking. Not that thinking is bad, but not getting engaged with the thoughts. It is sitting and using the senses, so the sense doors to the world. So the animal brain has a natural tendency to broaden attention to external events. Human beings have attention to both internal and external events. But often we pay attention to external events and we block our own feelings, or we pay too much attention to our feelings and don't pay attention to external events. So meditation will help you calibrate this and bring everything together skillfully. So the suppression of attention to thoughts and feelings results in a buildup of mental fatigue and stress. And one story I know that one teacher of mine had was, she talked about zebras. And when zebras are being chased by a lioness or some sort of predator, you know, they go through the same thing that we saw on that stress slide about having all these hormones flood into their body to get them to run, you know, that cortisol surge. But when they're finished and the predator's gone, they can just shake their body and get rid of all that stuff in their body that's built up. We as humans don't have that capacity. So meditation helps us to notice these suppressed distractions and to clear them from the mind and to reduce mental fatigue and stress. And that's why we turn to meditation. So meditation is like going to the gym. So how do I meditate? You pick an anchor or an object of concentration. I use the breath a lot. Some people are not comfortable using the breath. You can use another sense. Sometimes people listen to sounds or the feeling of touch. When we did that little short 3-minute meditation when we first came in together, I asked you to feel your palms of your hands or the back of your hands against your slacks or the fabric of your clothing. And you observe the anchor with curious awareness. So if you have a cold, you wouldn't say, you know, I can't breathe well. You would look at it with curiosity. I have a cold. My breath is not as smooth today. So it's not judgment or criticism. It's curious awareness. Or if there are sounds outside and you're trying to meditate and there are sounds of, I don't know, gulls, or maybe that's a soothing sound, or somebody mowing the grass. Oh, there's a distant sound. And then come back to the breath or come back to the meditation. And you notice that your thoughts can persist because the mind will try to hijack you out of the meditation and, you know, have you think of something else because the mind is designed to wander. There's nothing wrong as if it does. What's not wrong, but what is unhealthy or unskillful is following the mind to where you're going. Because when we meditate, we're in a state of non-doing. So we're just trying to be, and we're trying to be the observer. So with kindness, you continue to bring attention back to the object of focus. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting for 10 minutes, you could bring your mind back to the object of focus 5 times or 50 times. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're not a good meditator. Remember, this is going to the gym. It takes practice to get better at it. So right now, I invite you to settle in and let's get into a 10-minute guided meditation. And I'm just going to find my timer, excuse me. And I'm going to guide you through this 10-minute meditation. So I ask you to get comfortable and let's start. So as the ombu dies away, listening to the sound as it dissolves into the air, and inviting you to sit up straight but not stiffly, holding your head up on your shoulders, maybe tucking the chin in a little. That will lengthen the throat and the spine a little bit. Closing the eyes if that's comfortable, or holding them in a soft gaze. Hands in your lap, either palms up or palms down. And noticing all of the points where your body makes contact with the surface. If you're sitting in a chair, you may notice the small of your back. You may notice the bottoms of your thighs touching the chair or the couch or the cushion. You may notice the feeling of your hands against the fabric of your clothing. Just noticing your feet on the ground. And inviting you to breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. And just elongate the breaths a little right now, breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth. And breathing in one more time through the nose and out through the mouth. And then letting the breath go back to its normal pace with no help from you, just breathing in and breathing out. And noticing the breath, perhaps at the nostrils, noticing the cool air being breathed in and the warmer air being breathed out, perhaps. Or perhaps you notice the breath going in and out more at the chest, noticing the chest rise and fall, with the lungs rising and falling, rising with the in-breath and falling with the out-breath. Or if you're perhaps not new to meditation, you may be a belly breather and notice the abdomen or the belly rising with the in-breath and falling with the out-breath. But whatever spot of the body is most noticeable for you to detect the breath going in and out, I invite you to go there now. And as Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, breathing in, I know I am breathing in, and breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I stay in the present moment. Breathing out, I know it is a wonderful moment. Just breathing in and out. And if your mind does bring up thoughts or snatches of conversation from earlier this morning, or perhaps there's a to-do list that keeps rifling around in your mind, nothing wrong with that. Just come back to the breath, to the bodily sensations, whatever is a good anchor of awareness for you. Whatever holds your attention, just come back to that object of concentration and leave the thoughts. Plenty of time for thoughts later. Just breathing in and breathing out. And right about now, you may notice that sitting in this stillness, you may be noticing the sound of my voice, the sibilant sounds of the S words, or you may notice the sound of your own breath, or people in the room with you, or you may notice sounds from another room, or voices. If you'd like, or if the sound is accessible for you, leave the breath or bodily sensation as your objects of awareness and go to the sound, not to make stories about the sound, just listening to the sound with your ears, with that sense of hearing, without thinking, just reveling in the sound itself, just appreciating the sound, being the observer. Here in Dublin, I'm hearing wind outside my windows. What do you hear? And if you'd like, you can leave the sound and come back to the breath. You can come back to that feeling of touch or contact with the floor or the seat. Whatever object of concentration brings you into the present moment. And you can ask what Tara Brach asks. What's going on inside me right now? What's here now in this moment? Breathing in and knowing that you're breathing in, and breathing out and knowing that you're breathing out. Knowing that you're where you're supposed to be, nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, but sitting and being. Perhaps the breath is coming in waves, like waves at the ocean, coming in and then receding back out from the shore, riding those waves of breath, focusing on nothing else, feeling that sense of calm, that sense of resignation, that sense of being. Nowhere else to go, no place else to be. And again, if thoughts arise, and they will, just note them, label them even, planning, worry, tasks, and come back to the breath or the bodily sensation. Breathing in and out, just luxuriating in this sense of nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. You're not in charge here. There are no tasks to be accomplished. There's just this sense of sitting and watching, sitting and observing, sitting and being. In a few moments, The bell will ring. And take your time coming back into the room. This has been 10 minutes of being with yourself. Maybe put it into the chat. Even a word, how you're feeling. Just popcorn a word out, settled, relaxed, calm. Thank you. These are great. Present. Yes, and that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for presence when we meditate. As I said on Tuesday, meditating is like going to the gym. Just as you wouldn't start running a marathon without any practice, without going to the gym or without doing some warm-ups and some training, meditation is training you to become more mindful. So thank you. And so, with mindfulness, we learn to use our own innate resources to strengthen our attentional capacities. And what that means is to become more mindful. We strengthen our mental fitness. That's what we're trying to do here so that we know how to direct our energy. There are so many stressful or unpleasant and pleasant things that happen, but we realize that things pass away. Phenomena passes. So we approach life, we approach what happens with openness, curiosity, and even acceptance. And I know Tuesday I had to practice acceptance. And mindfulness also helps us to cultivate cognitive flexibility and ease in taking different perspectives, because we're not paying attention to the stories about our experience. We're paying attention to the direct experience. We're opening the sense doors. So we're improving our ability to notice and respond to the body's messages. And we're also enhancing our ability to notice thoughts and to notice emotions and know, is this really happening, or am I revving myself up, or am I getting carried away in a story? So the whole idea of mindfulness is to not get carried away. And sometimes people will level criticism or observation, maybe it's not really a criticism or a judgment, that mindfulness is selfish, or that meditating is so self-centered or self-absorbed. But it really isn't, because we're strengthening ourselves and our attentional capabilities, not just for ourselves, but for others. And one of the ways that happens is with mindful listening. And I know that whenever I'm in a faculty meeting, or if I'm in a meeting, even in a class when I'm teaching, or if I'm even in a staff meeting in our law library, I sometimes wonder, is what's happening when people are listening or having a dialogue? Are we listening, or are we thinking of something else or someone else? Are we planning on what we're going to say in rebuttal? Are we judging or being dualistic about what's being said? Are we wondering about our own image, perhaps sometimes? Will I sound smart? Will I sound not so smart if I ask this question? Or are we trying to control a situation? So mindfulness isn't selfish. In fact, it opens us up to others and it helps us pay attention. And Rachel Naomi Remen says, it is often through the quality of our listening and not the wisdom of our words that we are able to affect the most profound change in the people around us. And this is a beautiful quote by the Maharaj Nisargadatta. And I just love this. And I'm going to ask you to mindfully listen. As you watch your mind, you discover yourself as the watcher. When you stand motionless, only watching, you discover yourself as the light behind the watcher. So who is or what is this light behind the watcher? The source of light is dark. Unknown is the source of knowledge. That source alone is. Go back to that source and abide there. So with mindfulness, we can optimize our capacity to stop habitual autopilot, auto-driven, reactive modes of activity. We can see ourselves and others and information more clearly. We understand situations more fully because we're not making up stories about what's happening. And we're choosing effective, contextually relevant solutions to what's happening, to what's here now. And I want to say a word about gratitude. Gratitude is so important as just a way to look at life. And I love this quote from Maya Angelou, the poet. If you must look back, do so forgivingly. If you must look forward, do so prayerfully. However, the wisest thing you can do is to be present, in the present, gratefully. And that's what mindfulness is all about. We looked at Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, and there was an intentionality to it. And there was a decision to be mindful in the present, and gratitude helps. And this is a beautiful calligraphy from Thich Nhat Hanh. Present moment, wonderful moment. The present is where we want to be. Not worrying about the past, not worried about the future, not planning, staying in the present moment as much as possible, intentionally. So the benefits of mindfulness for legal professionals, and this is lawyers, law librarians, law students, anyone, better focus and concentration, stronger memory, able to identify and manage distractions, and they're all around us. We looked at that, those charts and those slides that were earlier about how many interruptions we have in a day and how many times our mind wanders, how many times we look at our phone, at least 150. We talked about the research in this area. So the capacity to manage difficult situations, if you stay in the present, is better. It also gives us an ability to deal with ethical quandaries, empathy with clients or customers in a law library, and just overall happiness. And I can tell you, in the 7 years that I've been a daily meditator, I do experience less stress. I'm not saying it's conquered. Less feelings of being worthless or being overwhelmed, totally less self-doubt, and much less depression. So before we end with a short 3-minute meditation, I'm just going to go back here. I was just wondering if there were any questions. So I'll stop the share. If there's any questions about mindfulness or about meditation itself, feel free. We're not in a webinar, so you can just speak out. And if there aren't questions, that's okay too. Okay, if there's no questions, I think I'll just finish with a short, very short meditation, just as we opened with a meditation last week. We're now going to just finish with a short meditation. And there'll be no bells for this one, just asking you to come back into being, coming back into presence, Maybe just closing the eyes again or keeping them in a soft gaze, whatever is most comfortable for you. And just breathing in and feeling the breath being breathed in and breathing out. And feeling perhaps of gratitude that we were able to finish this session. And a feeling of being with others, even if we just see their names on the screen. We're all in this together. Feeling of accompaniment as we sit. And I'm going to be quiet now for about 1.5 minutes. Just invite you to observe your body breathing and knowing that you're a body breathing in and breathing out. Maybe imagining the breath or visualizing the breath as waves of coming up on the shore. No need to do anything. Just be. And now taking in a deep breath in through the nose and letting it out through the mouth. And then taking a deep breath through the nose and letting it out audibly through the mouth. And then taking in breath through the nose and letting it out through straw breath, which is pursing your lips like a straw. And then opening your eyes, seeing each other, looking into each other's eyes, being grateful for the accompaniment, being grateful for the program. So I'm so glad you came back for part 2 of our program. And hopefully, CJ, thank you so much. And I hope that you're able to splice the two together. And as I said jokingly to CJ, I even wore the same outfit just in case he can do that. So I wish you all a wonderful end of the week and a wonderful continuation of your SEAALL conference. I'm here in Dublin, and I wish you well. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.